joining us on a Friday. And we'll start off with just our standard disclaimer.
This presentation was produced under U.S. Department of Education contract number GS00F115CA with Synergy Enterprises, Inc. The views expressed herein do not necessarily represent the positions or policies of the U.S. Department of Education. No official endorsement by the U.S. Department of Education of any product, commodity, service, or enterprise mentioned herein is intended or should be inferred.
All right, now that you're all official, we're going to kick off today just introducing you to some new OIE staff, talking about the vision for the upcoming year, and then we'll dive into induction services. We have some great guests with us, going to talk about best practices and challenges, give you some resources, and then wrap up with time for questions and upcoming events. As we go throughout, we'll take questions. So if any pop up for you, if you will just head over to the chat box and pop those in the chat box, we'll be pulling them as we go throughout. If you're not sure where the chat box is, if you look at the bottom of your screen, you should see what looks like a talk bubble. If you click on that, that should open up your chat box and you'll be able to type all your questions, comments, great ideas right there into that box. And I see at least some of you have found it because I all of a sudden am seeing messages. Oh, and I also see that it's potentially showing you the wrong thing here. Let's see. Is this view? There we go. Joys of technology. All right, and with that, I'm going to turn it over to kick off our OIE team.
Hello and welcome. My name is Donna Sabis-Burns. I am the group leader for the discretionary grant. In my mother tongue, Sego, Donna Nyanyats, Aswego, Niga Nawego, Nuatu, Wagi, Dorlota, Niga Negahaga, Wago, Wansota. I am from the Six Nations. I am from the Turtle Clan of the Mohawk tribe. I am here, as you can see, we have our kind of growing org chart. We have a new Office of Indian Education Director, Mr. Julian Guerrero Jr., and you will be able to hear from him later on today. And he has joined us recently in September, and we are so thankful. I came back to the Office of Indian Education, gosh, it was May, and I have my colleague, group leader, Formula Grants, Crystal Moore. And she has her team of Annabelle Toledo, Wanda Lee, Dr. Marie Julian, and Tawanda Avery for the Formula Grants team. And then with me on the discretionary team, I have, of course, the lovely and talented Angela Hernandez. And we have Shala Ortega, who does our STEP program. We have Bianca Williams, who works with our demonstration program. And we have actually hired two new people. One is Jennifer Leo, and her picture, we need to get that updated. And we also have another person, Donna Bussell, who will be joining us actually in a couple of weeks. So we are very thankfully growing our OIE family, and we are so happy about that. Next slide, please. Usually this is what Julian Guerrero likes to do, but because he will be joining us a little later, he had asked me on his behalf to share this vision of OIE. And this vision comes from us developing and kind of rebuilding and strengthening our circle. We have had a lot of staff changes, as you all know, lots of turnovers, and we are now filling those holes. And as we do that, we've come up with some 10 very important key points that as an office that we are looking to strengthen. And this is important to share with you as we head into this new improved OIE family. And at the top, of course, is for you, the grantee, stronger and meaningful technical assistance and improving those relationships with our grantees. It's very difficult to do that with a short staff, as we have been for a very long time. And I'm very proud of our team for being able to accomplish the fascinating things that we've been able to do with just a couple, literally a couple of people. But now as we build our staff, we're also improving and building our relationships. We're reacting and responding to the continuous improvement planning based on a grantee satisfaction. Some of you may have heard of this and seen this and participated in this, but we do take the results very seriously and look at the needs of our community, and we'll be addressing that as part of our vision as well. More increased discretionary and formula collaboration as an OIE team, along with streamlining some internal procedures, improving employee morale, and also especially giving some OIE visibility. Mr. Guerrero is on it. He has some great things planned and is very excited about being able to make OIE more visible, not just, of course, in our department, but nationwide. We want timely and transparent support, stronger connection with our state Indian education offices, and also being there as we revolve around such the unprecedented time of COVID and meeting the needs of our community as well. So those are the 10 vision points of OIE as we move forward. Next slide, please. And as I said, I am the discretionary leader. I have this program, I have to say, is very near and dear to my heart. I used to be the program officer for this program a long time ago, before we had electronic databases, dare I say that. And I'm honored to be part of this group again. We have the new and improved version with Angela Hernandez, who is at the helm. And I am very, very happy to be here. And on the behalf of the director, myself, of course, we share the excitement as we build and expand. And so I'm very, very excited to be part of this meeting. So thank you very much, and I will turn it over.
Welcome again, everybody. It's really great to see all of your faces, even though it's virtual and not in person. And it tells me a couple of things. One, that you're healthy and well, and I hope the same is true for your loved ones and your colleagues. So I know it's been a really rough time, and I'm really appreciative of the time you're taking today to be here with us. Can we go to the next slide, please? I want to start by turning it over to our new technical assistance team. And you might have seen my email that went out to all of you just earlier this week. If you have not been involved with OIE activity through maybe some other grant programs, and I know some of you have through our ACE demonstration grant program or through the NEL, the Native American Language Program, you might be newer to this conversation. As of this fall, we brought on board a new technical assistance contractor that is supporting the programmatic work that you do. And this is in addition to the existing supports that you already and continue to get from our other contracted staff at ANLAR Westat, and that's around the data collection system. So they are still there, and they are still there for your support on anything related to the data system and to training around that. But we have with us today, I'm going to turn it over to Kathleen first. Kathleen, and I'll ask you to introduce the team, who will be helping us with discussions like the one we're going to have today. So Kathleen, can I ask you to?
Hi, everybody. I'm Kathleen Bethke, and I serve as the project director for the OIE Technical Assistance Project. And someone you'll get to know very well, Sarah Brightwell, who is our technical assistance lead. Olani Lilly, who is a TA specialist and works alongside Sarah to develop trainings. Tracy Mayday Karageorge, who's not on with us today, I don't believe, also works with Sarah's team to provide TA. And then Sarah Whitehead, our terrific coordinator, who you'll get emails and updates from on a consistent basis. So we are just so excited to be a part of this team, and we are here to serve you in any way that we can. Thank you.
Thanks, Kathleen. Next slide. And Sarah, I'm going to turn it over to you at this time.
Great. So as we get started today, we know it's been a while since we've been able to chat and check in with one another. And so we really wanted to touch base on what's happening in your project. What are those things going on, the accomplishments, the things maybe you have done that are new or just exciting progress? And what challenges have you encountered? What are those things going on that might be expected challenges or unexpected challenges that we maybe can even put our heads together and brainstorm around? So what I'm going to do is actually stop the share so we can see each other, just to make that a little bit of an easier conversation. So you are welcome to share your accomplishments and or challenges over in the chat box, but you're also welcome to unmute and just share with us aloud. So if you are looking for how to do that, if you want to share aloud, but you're not sure how to unmute yourself, down at the bottom of your screen, you should see what looks like a little like radio microphone, and you can toggle your audio on and off that way. So if there's anyone who feels up for sharing great things going on in your program or challenges happening with your program.
So hi, I'm Katie Drummer from Stonechild College, and we are very happy to tell everybody that we are completely accredited through the state of Montana. And that has been a process that has happened through this whole grant. And it's been a great partnership with using a mentor and going from a 2+2 to having our own 4-year degree. We have had, I believe, at the end of this month, we will have had, let's see, I think 4 to 11 graduates, with several coming right on their heels. So we're very excited about that. We have had a great time collecting data and learning from that data and able to turn it over right away and improve our program. And we work very diligent to keep our policies and procedures in place and to follow them and get all of those things working so that we are able to be ethical and fair to everybody. And that seems to be going really well. We have become very creative during COVID and learned all kinds of ways that they can get into the classrooms and they can do their clinicals and student teaching. And that has, you know, it's been a lot of work, but it has been fun. One thing when I started out in education 35 years ago, I said, well, I'm going to do this because it never gets boring and no truer words were ever said. So we've enjoyed it. Things are going well. We are having fun all morning. I was talking to some of our teachers. All of our teachers have been placed and found jobs immediately, which is twice as exciting. And I had conversations with 3 or 4 of them this morning saying, okay, what I need help. I can't keep them interested over Christmas here, or, you know, I need to do this or I need to do that. And so we have really enjoyed that kind of formal but informal induction. And that they feel free to call or messenger and then they call, or all those kinds of things, Facebook, all that jazz. So I think that is good. We have given them opportunities to do some trainings, which tend to be kind of more personal to their own school, but it feels like we are a bona fide program. And so for us, that's kind of an accomplishment because it took a while to get here. So that's it. I'm just happy to share our where we're at right now. So thank you.
Yeah. And that's not sort of an accomplishment. That's definitely an accomplishment. That's an exciting fall and progress. Thank you for sharing. Anyone else have great things going on or have challenges you'd like to get some feedback on?
This is Amy Berland, and I'm calling from Salish Kootenai College in Western Montana. And of course, COVID has created challenges for us. We're on a quarter stem, and so when it hit in March, our student teachers were just going out to student teach and begin their student teaching. And with the chaos in the schools going online our students were not able to student teach. They still were able to work with their supervising teachers to some extent and help them deliver online classes to their students, but they delayed their formal student teaching till this fall, and they were successful and completed that. We haven't lost any of our participants. However, a couple were delayed some, and so I know that they will not be able to finish completely by this spring. But everybody is moving forward and doing really well and learning so many other things along with us. So
Yeah.
anyway, the accomplishments outweigh the challenges still.
Yeah,
Thank
and
you.
it's wonderful that you've been able to keep all of your participants and everybody's employed and teaching and student teaching, and that's great. Anyone else feel like sharing?
I would like to share. Hi, it's Renuka De Silva here from UND, and I'm the program director for the Indigenous Language Education. As everybody seemed to have mentioned about the COVID, yes, it's been a trying moment, but we need to look beyond that. And actually, it may have even helped us to plan for the future even better, keeping these in mind. And our cohort is moving forward as well. And we managed to get them um, observations and some teaching with the placement right now, which is getting them really involved in observation, real time in Google Classrooms and all of that, because we never know, right? Because next spring, it might be all online, the student teaching. So this has been a great experience for them. And I'm happy to say that they're moving along, and there's been the need for a lot of support, but that's to be expected too. So we're all working together, and let's see, we're looking for new horizons next year and beyond. Thank you.
Thank you. And I love that positive outlook. It's new horizons. It's not this challenge. It's a new horizon.
Yeah. I'm just going to mention that I'm Carmelita up in North Dakota at Bismarck, and we have both undergraduate and graduates in our award here. And I've had a number of conversations with both graduate students and undergraduates, and there's been quite a bit of death here in North Dakota, and particularly on the reservation at Turtle Mountain and at Standing Rock. And it's been very difficult. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. Very often when I'm talking with students, they're emotionally overwhelmed. You know, they've lost not just their grandfather, but then a few days later, their grandmother, not just their uncle, but their aunt. You know, and so of course in the reservation communities, everyone is related. And so it's not just a random passing of an individual, but it's a true member of the community that everyone is in somehow connected to. So it's very difficult for them to sometimes focus. And so I feel like I just have to be like the tissue, you know, and just let the tears come. And then we can talk about, okay, so knowing where you're at right now and knowing where we're heading, what do I need to do to help you? And sometimes they tell me just being able to just like let it go, you know, just to let it go, and then somehow collect themselves and feel like they can continue. I've had, you know, my completers, I have completers every year because of the nature of the design of my program. But so my completers in May who went into student teaching or went into the classroom, and mind you, the schools in the BIE system up here were closed in March, and those kids haven't been back yet. Those kids have not been back in the building. Now the teachers were in the building for a while, but now they're not even in the buildings. But they never envisioned when they were being trained to be a teacher that this is what it's going to be like. And so we've had a number of discussions, you know, about what induction services they feel like they need, you know, and that's kind of been what it is. on the good side, do I have completers that are up and coming? Yes. I have probably 35 individuals who will be completing their masters in May. But those individuals are, you know, everybody's working very, very hard, just like everybody on the screen is. And I see all my buddies out there and I just feel like, oh my gosh, I missed having our jam in November because it was always fun just to see everyone and visit and to hear the stories. But I'll be honest, it's been hard up here in North Dakota. We were, you know, like we were number one for COVID. That wasn't a very good thing to be, but we certainly all felt it. And I've lost family members as well. So you know, I'm looking for a brighter sun, and I like hearing Renuka's attitude because that makes me feel better.
Yeah, but it's wonderful. You have so many who are still, despite all of the challenges and things being so different, to have such a large group who are going to be completing this year. That's exciting.
Can I just add something really quick? This is Chris Sims. I'm coming in from New Mexico. I think with this whole impact of this pandemic on our communities, you know, we've really had to think also, we're a program and it's, we're supposed to be in our 4th and final year where we're supposed to be doing nothing but induction services. So most all of our participants who have successfully graduated are or were gainfully employed as of, you know, the beginning of the year. And then of course this whole thing upended work situations and all that. But regardless of how things have changed at the local school level where our graduates are now employed, you know, they've also had to pivot their strategies and practices according to what the local situation it has been with regard to the pandemic. And given that, and given the fact that all of our graduates are in different systems, meaning BIE schools, public schools, charter schools, we've come to realize that we really needed to somehow provide the, I guess you could say, the emotional kind of support that's needed. It's just not the business of are you teaching and, you know, all of this stuff. It's also that emotional support and well-being that we are not having to pay close attention to make sure that these folks of ours that have graduated and who are now employed, you know, don't lose hope or don't get discouraged, I guess you could say. Some of them will have been first year teachers or first year administrators. And so what we've had to also rethink how we do this induction service business because we can't meet in person anymore. We can't even go out as faculty because of the restrictions of our university, you know, to actually go and visit these folks. So what we've done in our program is to initiate for the first time. We had our first session last month and we'll do this now continuously for the next couple of months. We put together a platform for where we can try to meet everybody at least once a month. And during that session that we have virtually, we kind of set up the format. So we center our discussions around case studies, meaning that our own participants bring to the discussion critical issues that they're faced with, and then during the session, you know, it gives the other participants a way to contribute to maybe helping to solve an issue. And we do that in addition to, of course, featured speakers or presenters as part of these induction service sessions that we have. And that's how we've been able kind of to bring them together, but also with the idea they can talk about their current issues and challenges. And we've done it once now and it seemed to have gone very good, but we're now going to build on that. And hopefully that will also be a means of support for their own also emotional health and well-being. Thank you.
No, thank you. I love that, Chris. You know, there's been a lot of talk about the social emotional needs of our K-12 students, but Yeah, our teachers and our future teachers have those same needs. So I love how you're meeting that and providing them not just with the cohort experience, but really kind of a support group. That's great. Anyone else?
Sarah, I actually had a quick question related to that topic for the group. I'm curious to know to what extent your participants have been able to take advantage of any mental or, social well-being health services out of your institution. Is that something that's offered? Is there, is that a gap in terms of maybe needing to establish partnerships with those services in your institution? I'm just curious to know what you're observing.
Yeah, and I'd love to have some people share. We can also, if you're not maybe feeling like sharing, but just to kind of get a quick temperature of the room, if you will look down at the bottom of your screen, you will see it looks like two little people and it says participants. If you click that, it will bring up the list of everybody in this meeting, but at the bottom it has yes and no buttons. So we can just do kind of a quick poll. So the first question being, does your organization offer any mental health or emotional support services? So if you can just vote yes or no, there should be a little green yes, a little red no. We'll take a quick check. All right. Thank you. All right, I'm going to go ahead. Looks like most people have voted. So I'm going to go ahead and clear those and we'll do the second question. So I'm clearing. Second question being, have your participants really been able to take part in those or chosen to take part in those to your knowledge? Is that something you've been able to connect them with? Right. And then we'll keep letting you vote if you're still voting over there in the yes, no, but would love to hear from anybody who's maybe been able to take advantage of those services, or maybe they're available, but you haven't been able to really connect your participants.
I think that's part of the challenge is helping to make those connections and linkages, because while these kinds of support services are there, and our students, are still available to take advantage of that. I'm not absolutely sure that they're actually taking advantage of that.
Right.
And the fact that they're in different systems, I don't know even locally what those systems also provide. For example, BIE, is an educational system. Do they have something professionally available to their teachers? Things like that.
Yeah, that's great feedback. Thank you.
Moving forward, I would like to see our program has its own support that way, rather than a general we have a well-established support system throughout the university, so I'm really very happy about that. But I think for our program, it would be really good if it's more directed towards our program.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that would create a lot of ease on our own students. So that's something that I would like to recommend for our program.
Yeah, no, that's very helpful. Thank you.
Nuka, are you suggesting that perhaps the services would be tailored to our population, which are Native scholars? Or
absolutely,
can you explain that further, how you see that? Because when I think of my Native scholars, they are, I feel like I could say they would be reluctant to reach out to support services from individuals that they really don't know, to share those types of feelings openly like that. I think they would be kind of shy or reserved. I feel like they I mean, they know me. Many of them I've had since they were in 6th grade, right, at one time or another. But
Yeah.
I mean, in general, I was just wondering how do you
Yeah.
see that frame? Because I think that's a very interesting and important thing.
Yes, so Carmelita, generally, those systems are very difficult for anybody to really align with because of the stigmas attached to it, right? So although I know a couple of my students, or all of them, not all of them, a few of them have reached out to some of the support systems, I think it would be better if we had an indigenous support system in place where they can actually talk to those people and they feel that they understand. I had a long conversation with one of our students, and that's something that came through as well, because they would know how to align with the medicine that is needed, rather than top down advice from somewhere else that's really not relatable. Because in any of these events, you need to be able to relate. You need to be able to know the backgrounds, the peoples, and everything. How we think, how we do things, how we relate to things, how we function. And if that is not in your backpack, it's very difficult to really talk to someone about what that person is going through. So people tend to hold back, perhaps for the fear of being judged. And I think that's very real. So you just basically skim through what you're going through. And even after many hours of talks, I mean, nothing's really resolved or steps taken sometimes. But even that idea of, oh, she or he is like me idea really helps.
Yeah, I think that makes complete sense.
Could I say something also, please? This is Lou Ann from Ogallala Lakota College. And I noticed we had a training on Wednesday night for our participants, and we're a pre-administrative program for administrators. And so we had set up a training for them this past Wednesday to help them in their future endeavors as principals. And we're assessing the financial health of a business office. But it became very apparent when we were doing the training that some of the participants, you could tell they were very tired. And we're on the Pine Ridge Indian Reservation in South Dakota. And some of our teachers teach in the BIE tribal grant schools, and they're very worried about the children. It's all distance learning. The teachers aren't even in the schools because we've had numerous lockdowns. And this young man, his name is David, and he continually was just rubbing his face with his hands and saying that he's worried about his children. He teaches 3rd graders. And so we spent some part of the time of that training, instead of talking about the training topic, we did some brainstorming with them and just tried to do some icebreakers and trying to get them to talk, saying, how are you doing? How are you feeling? And then they really opened up and they said, it's really, really hard right now. Not only are they not in the schools, the children aren't logging on because a lot of our homes, you know, there's 12 to 15 people in the homes, and Chromebooks are breaking down, and it's just really a hard time for everybody right now. So it was very apparent that they really appreciate the opportunity that they got to talk that night about how they're feeling. And so that's really has to be addressed with our program participants. Anyway, thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Well, and I also saw that Marina had her hand up.
So that's okay. I ended up just putting it in the chat, just sharing that here in Milwaukee, we are fortunate that we have 2 agencies in the area. So Her Wellness is an organization that offers free mental health services to everyone, but it's all rooted in Indigenous perspectives, and just about everyone on staff there is a First Nations person. And then we also have an Indian Health Center that also is continuing to offer mental health services for free to our students. I don't have a really good sense of how many of our students are actually taking advantage of those resources, but they are there. I also did see from Christine, nope, that's not it. Sorry, I'm going back up. I think as Maria was talking about, there's someone in Montana that does an institute that also offers services that can be contracted out. I think that's a great idea to maybe even establish a network for our students to be able to tap into, so those that live in areas where they are not so fortunate to have someone local can still utilize and get the help that they would need to be supported.
Yeah, and for those of you who do have different resources that you know of, if you want to pop them in the chat box, or I'll also share my contact info at the end of the webinar, I'm happy to put those together and then send them out to everybody so you all have that information and can utilize that. All right. Well, I did see that we were joined by Julian, so I wanted to give him an opportunity to say hello and introduce himself to all of you as well.
Great. Thank you so much. Let me get my camera on here. Okay. Hi, everybody. Pleasure to meet you guys. Sorry I had to join late. You know, there's plenty of meetings to do, but I caught some of the conversation, and I just wanted to, one, acknowledge our hardworking contractors as well as hardworking OIE staff. Angela, thank you. Donna, thank you. And I wanted to just take a moment to really just kind of introduce myself and see and meet all of you virtually. I sure do wish that we could do this in person, but you know, now is an incredible time of challenge, as was just being recently spoken about, the impacts, the disparate impacts of coronavirus on Indian country. Wanted to give you a little bit of my background, where I come from. So I am Oklahoma born, Oklahoma raised. However, I'm also military brat raised as well. So we moved in many places. I've lived in Texas, Georgia, Germany, Colorado, back to Oklahoma off and on, and really trying to ground some of these introductory comments here and in the essence of PD. You know, all the different schools I've been to, all of the different educational environments, whether it be close to the reservation, off the reservation, overseas, abroad, I never had one native indigenous teacher. Not one. I never been in a school with one indigenous native administrator. Not one. That's a shame. The work that you do, the work that your programs embark on, are truly the last line of defense for tribal sovereignty. Education, a free and public education, an education for a native mind waiting to be unlocked. And I know that you guys put and invest an incredible amount of time in professional development for Indian education community. And I'm so thankful for the work that you guys put in. And, you know, in the lens of all that I can offer in this short amount of time for comments, I just wanted to just let you know that the work that you do is of incredible importance among all of our competitions. And I'm just so excited for, you know, continuing to stay connected to this work. I'm so grateful that, you know, you've continued investing your time despite these challenges of coronavirus, and continue to let us know. And Donna had shared, you know, the vision earlier, and, you know, that's a broad vision. It's a broad net. And we have many things that we're facing at the OIE, but we're committed to this work. I'm committed to your success. And the line that I always go to is your success as programs, or our success as an Office of Indian Ed. So always let us know those challenges. Let us know kind of what you're facing on the local ground level, because you are the pulse for what's to come for us, as well as setting the foundation for future generations of professional excellence. And I just really enjoy the time that I can spend with you all today. Maraweka, thank you so much.
Thank you, Julian. Well, and I appreciate all of you taking the time to share and being open with what's going on in your programs and your communities. I want to hop back into the presentation so we make sure to get through all of the information, but we'll definitely have some more time to discuss as well. So I want to introduce our two featured guests today. So we have Dr. Carmelita Lamb from the University of Mary in North Dakota. And then we have Dr. Maria Tenorio from Portland State University in Oregon. So I'm going to let Dr. Lamb kick off with her introductions. Oh, you're on mute.
After all this time, I still don't know how to unmute myself. And for some of my colleagues that are sitting in the room, they're overwhelmed with joy at the thought of that finally. But it is an honor to see all of you again after, you know, quite an eventful year. I think that many of you who have been in these types of programs before have known how important it is to me as far as Indian education and providing an opportunity for this particular population that they're very close to me. My entire career has been in Indian education from the time I was a high school science teacher. And at this point now, like I said, some of the kids that I have, I had them when they were in junior high. You know, I knew them when they were in high school, and they came to me and said, "Miss Lamb, I'm pregnant." And I said, "Well, you're not sick. That doesn't mean you can't come to class. You're just pregnant. You'll be all right. Keep coming to class." And that is my attitude within this program. Now as the leader of the NELP, our program is called NELP, Native American Education Leadership Program. And so my students are known as NELPs. And if you go on Facebook, the NELPs are very active. You know, they're very socially connected. They are very close as a cohort. I have 3 sets of sisters in my graduate NELP program right now. Think of that, 3 sets of sisters. And so, and of those 3 sets, 2 sets were with me in undergrad. So they're moving forward in their graduate program. We've had to take pause. We have, I'm not gonna, you know, sugarcoat it. We've had to give extensions. We've had to file incompletes because they just can't, and we're doing that now. The semester is over today, but I've got a number of incompletes because they said as soon as my regular classroom, their K-12 classroom, can shut down for a little bit, they can actually come over and finish the work that they needed to do for their graduate. So and because I know Native scholars, and I know that they are stronger than any non-Native scholar I've ever had walk in my classroom, because they're doing it with children, they're doing it with a partner, without a partner, you know, on and on and on and on and on, all these things that get in front of them, and they do it anyway. And because of that, they are stronger than so many other participants in higher ed that I've been exposed to. But they do need that care. They need that empathy. And sometimes I feel like just that little bit, that moment where we can say, okay, I get it, and let them cry and understand that I'm there with them and say, but we're going to do this anyway, okay? And here's how. Giving them a very direct plan. I need to hear from you on this day, and we're going to talk again in 2 weeks. And on the 4th week, I'll have what I need to write complete on that class, and let's move on. We're really excited, and the way I am really pushing them now at the end is I said, how about that ribbon skirt? How's that ribbon skirt coming? Who's doing your beading? How's the regalia? And talking about that and thinking about that. And I show them pictures from former graduates in the NELP program and all their regalia and all the joy and all their families. And it seems to uplift them. You know, even when they feel like I can't go another day with another death. I know I shouldn't get all emotional about this, but I do, because I know those people in their families that have passed away. I know who they are. And, but aside from all that, even pre-COVID, those same types of conversations happened. You know, I sometimes think with my female scholars that their partners will start to misbehave just at the moment that they're going to cross the finish line. And I was like, I tell them, you know what? He's not defining you. And so it's my grandma attitude, and I've earned it, that has allowed me to be in a position that I truly love, and work with students that are absolutely amazing. And then and I do have some that don't make it. I'm not going to, you know, say that all of my 100%. I don't have 100%, but I've got a very high percent. And the ones that can't make it generally is okay, because those are not going to be the ones that are going to do the hard work for our children that needs to be done. If they cannot do the work to earn a bachelor's degree, they're not showing up to class on time, they're not, those are not the teachers that we want in front of our children. We want the best teachers in front of our children, and they deserve to have the best teachers. And so for some, you know, for some that don't make the program, that's okay, you know, because those that do are going to be good and really give our children what they truly need. So that's my background.
Thank you. Dr. Tenorio? Hope you're on mute too.
Oh, good. I'm not the only one.
It's just our thing.
Yeah, I just unmuted myself. Do you want me to start, Sarah, on the induction? Or
if you want to tell folks a little bit about you and let me know when you want to go to induction, and I'll flip right over to your slide.
Okay. I'm a relocated citizen of the Pueblo of San Felipe. I grew up in Michigan. That was a time in transition, I think, for a lot of families of moving out of the, moving into the cities to become welders or whatever. So we ended up in the Detroit area. I went to school at the University of Michigan. That's where I did my master's work in teaching. And then I moved to Portland. I think a lot of the work that I've done over the years before I came into this program was in Indian child welfare. And through that program, I worked for the state of Oregon and began to really connect with tribal nations from coast to coast, because I would have to, for our caseworkers, find out whether or not a child was enrolled or what the family resources were. So I began to learn more about different tribal connections. And then after that, I worked for a Native Indian law program that, and we focused more on the Oregon laws. So I came into the this program here with a better understanding of connecting the students at Portland State who tend to be intertribal, and understanding some of their background, and introducing them to one another, because they're not, I don't know that we've ever had a cohort in our 3 grants that have had 2 students from the same tribe. So it's very interesting that way, and it can also be very challenging. Right now we have 1 student who's in induction. He returned to his tribe as soon as the pandemic required the schools to close down, and he finished off, and he was hired to teach at his reservation school. There are 2 school districts there. So he's doing quite well. I think the beauty of his performance right now is that this is something that is very dear to my heart. One of our students who came out of the University of Colorado, Lewis, I believe, his father worked at, his father taught at Portland State. And about 5 years ago, I think he had a heart attack. He was in DC and he passed. He's quite young. He's about 55 years old. This young man, this teacher candidate it was a challenge. We left him alone for a while, even though he had been communicating about wanting to join our program. He moved to Oregon because his mother was there, and then he had a child. So he joined the program, and it was a difficult year for him. So I think what I heard Carmelita saying is that she not only was this administrator, but she was a counselor and an advocate. And at times, you know, we're a mother to the children. We stand in place and as a relative. So this young man completed, he was a history major, and he was hired immediately and by the school district and was asked to implement the first Native Studies course in a public high school in Oregon. And then he took this, that was 3 years ago. He wasn't supposed to supervise anyone for student teaching, but I pushed the district a little because I had this student coming out who did have a history background. And I said, I want these two students together. So they were, one was Grand Ron, one's Oglala, and they worked together this past year. And I think that amazing relationship of just two really bright students who supported one another through this student teaching helped the last student, who was an Oregon tribal member, complete his degree and go on to flourish in his teaching right now. So I think what I'm mostly trying to say is that we have a real hands-on approach at our urban project, which had started out, we started out calling ourselves the American Indian Urban Teacher Program. And I met with the government to government meeting of the Education Committee. And they said, well, we don't want you to say urban. We want it to be rural because a lot of us are located in the rural parts of the state. So that's, we dropped the urban and we meet the needs of all of our 9 tribes and have them advise us as partners. I think that's probably the most that I want to say now. Is that okay?
That's perfect. Yeah. And so then we'll go over, and if you could just share with us a little bit about your induction services.
Sure. I was taking some notes, and so I wanted to say what this didn't capture was one comment I made is that our induction begins when that student walks through our door, and they begin filling out the application, and we find out what tribe they're from, start making connections that way because of my interest in different tribes across the country and connections with some of our former students. We get their resume started from their application on work that they've done, their interests, and we go over the payback agreement. We had a little booklet that we gave each of them that detailed with photographs and a lot of white space, their requirements. And that I think is real key. We've had a couple of students who dropped out this past grant section, which was we hadn't had before. We almost had a third, but we talked to him, and he didn't feel confident. He was teaching middle grade, so I think it was 7th grade, and he didn't feel as competent as he felt he should be. He got the highest score in EdTPA of any student in that class, but his as far as his teaching practice went, he felt not quite as confident. So I had him, he had turned in his badge, and I met him for lunch and brought in my co-PI, whose husband was a carpenter. This young man was a carpenter also. And so they talked about how it's different being a carpenter because you can always know when your job is complete. With students, you may not always know. Anyway, we had a very good discussion, and he went back to school that day and reclaimed his place as a teacher candidate. So we try to make sure that our students understand the payback provisions and that they don't want to be caught into a cash payback, as well as their goal, their dream was to be a teacher. So with the relationship building, not only do we work intimately with our program participants, I've tried to work carefully with all of our faculty. Some work at the Alaskan villages, some have had connections with tribal reservations, and I will ask the faculty to let me know how the students are doing informally, and also with the university supervisor. That's how we stay on top of how our participants are doing. And the first thing that I did was to immediately go to all of the school districts in the area and say, we have these students who are coming out and they are going to be focused on culturally responsive pedagogy. They are going to learn this. We're going to have monthly seminars. And that made them very appealing to the school districts because that's what they were looking for. We have a one-year program of study. And so I think that's what drives me to keep in contact with our students as much as possible, because I know I'm going to lose them in a year. So we have monthly seminars. This last cohort said, no, we want to meet more often. So we met twice a month. And we always have a dinner, a lunch with that. And they enjoy coming to that because, you know, it's food and discussion. And for a lot of the students, it's a time to let off steam, but for others, it's just a time to relax. And then we go into the meat of the content, whether it's culturally responsive pedagogy or anything else involving teaching and learning. We always try to focus on the latest research applied to Native students. At the end of the year, we bring in the full community because we're not on a reservation. So we bring in the urban Native community. The Bow and Arrow Club will have a buffalo stew and fry bread, and we bring in the elders and the young people to blanket our students with Pendleton blankets and to welcome them back into the community of educators, knowing that our youth and our elders and all of our community, they are the teachers. And then they're gone. But our relationship is maintained throughout their induction. We have some students from our very first cohort of 10 years ago who stay in touch with us. One comes to visit her mother in Seattle, and she'll come down to visit us in Portland. She went on to get an administrator's degree. We had another student who let us know that he got his administrator's degree in Washington. We have one student who just this year started her doctoral studies. She was a student of Bill Demmert, who was the original OIE administrator or director. So I think we hone these relationships by sending out emails on research, on funding possibilities, on grant opportunities. I think over at Salish Kootenai, they had the international the health and PE games, the traditional games. We sent one of our students there. A couple of our students have gone there. So we do as much as possible to maintain this relationship. And I'm really happy to report that we get contact with the students all the time because of that. And I think that helps with the induction in their knowing that someone is always there when they're struggling through their first year. And then they start planning for remaining there for the 3 years to make that cutoff date. And I'm glad to say that we've got a really good record of our students staying in the field of teaching.
Yeah, and I think exactly what you kind of stress, that relationship building really seems to be the key. I mean, it almost seems like a family atmosphere. I know when we originally talked, you said, I don't let them leave. They're going to stay and they're going to be able to do this. So yeah, with that kind of support behind them, it's hard not to stay engaged and in the program.
Yes. I found that a lot of what Carmelita wrote in terms of her support to and activities that are ongoing is a lot of what we do also at Portland State.
Great. Well, and that's the perfect lead in. So thank you, Maria. And we'll head over to Carmelita to share a bit about your induction services.
Okay, thank you. Since we've had this program going, our original induction programming involved, bringing the completers in for a weekend, and we would have tenured teachers or, career teachers who'd had 10 or more years in the field serving as one-on-one supports for those individuals, and they would, and it was very directed towards instruction within the Bureau of Indian Ed, in other words, within the reservation communities, because the completers at the undergrad, they want to stay in their community. We are generating teachers at the tribal college to serve the tribal communities. That's the intent. And so, so it was very directed towards that. But as this began to change, across the globe, not just here within our area, but across the globe, we started thinking, well, what can we do? We can't, communities are shut down. Nobody's supposed to be traveling. It's just, we have to think of it completely different. And our local licensing agency, where all of our participants go to receive their state licensure to actually go into the classroom, they began to think about, well, what can we do? And so they developed the North Dakota Teacher Support Service for first-year teachers. They brought it from that group workshop over the weekend type of thing into this virtual setting. And not only did they, and so they meet every third week in a virtual Zoom, much like this. I'm on the schedule for January, and they invite guest speakers to come in. The first one they had on technology, and so they showed, and I actually made some comment, as many of you know I would, to the organizers, that instead of showing them 10 different things that they could do with regard to technology and to engage the students in this Google Books platform, because I could just see my participants. I mean, there's a lot of first year teachers in the room, but I could see mine going, oh my gosh, just one more thing that I got to figure out. So I went back to the organizers and I said, let's just pare this down a bit. Let's tap the brakes on this. You're making my participants feel worse, and you're making me feel worse. So how about if we just did it where you only had a few technology, 4, and let's talk about those 4 really well for the next hour and a half, thinking forward to my next round of participants going into induction. They're like, yeah, that's right. Yeah, and slow it down. So then the next induction meet that we had was this one, which was provided by Melanie Carville, and it only talked about self-care. What can we talk about today that's going to give your heart something to sing about? What can we do? Just everyone, let's just bring it way down. And that, to be able to bring some calm, to let everyone else know that what you've been really bummed out about these last 8 weeks, so has 10 other people in the room. And then they talk about that. And then she was providing, support for their soul, to help them, because I tell the students that are becoming teachers, here's the deal with this. It's a profession, right? We got a license. It's a profession. It's a job, because we're going to earn a living to support ourselves and our families, but it's a vocation. In other words, we are called to do this work, because it's not just about having our students know about content, social studies and reading and math, and those days of that's all we do in the classroom are over. We have to address our students' from where they're at today. And that's a whole different bucket. And for our young teachers to recognize from the very beginning that there are going to be days that my students are going to have more significant emotional difficulty than I am. Even though we're not supposed to be showing our students that we're having emotional difficulty, right? We're supposed to leave that in the trunk of the car, get in there into the classroom and do the work. So it changed very much from, from early on in the induction programming, where it was like just barraging them with all this stuff, these supports, to really just talking about what's going on with you today, and being able for them to understand that that's the way we feel is okay. Don't hit yourself with this guilt, because our young teachers are already full of all kinds of guilt and self-doubt. Am I doing it right? My students are not there. They're not staying engaged. I'm not a good teacher, and on and on and on. And we have to just help them understand that they have just to let that go right now. I am so glad that one of the few things that I think our Department of Public Instruction has done in our state is just said, okay, let's just relax here on the state assessment for a little bit. That took a huge weight off of all the teachers, not just the young teachers and the first year teachers and the early career teachers, but for everybody to just say, okay, we're not going to worry about the state assessment. Well, no kidding. How are we going to do a state assessment now when nobody's in the classroom? Are we going to just like shoot it to them online and hope that they do it well over at home? No, let it go. So that took a big load off of all teachers. But the other thing is, and so now I'm going to come in January, and we're going to talk about classroom management in a digital environment. Classroom management is kind of my groove. And so we can talk about some things that we can do, and I'm not going to bring them, 50 different things. I'm going to bring 4. Here's 4 things that we can do, and let's talk about them and how are the different ways in which that can happen. So on and on and on, over the course of the academic year, my participants have an opportunity to come into this classroom, this virtual workshop that's ongoing by our state licensing agency. And then they get to chat with all the others. And the program, it's in Canvas, so it has modules. And they had a great video that was about, I'm the genius. I'm the genius in what? And so each person is supposed to talk about what they're the genius in it. What's their genius, and everybody has it. And the idea that people can think of more things that they're not a genius about than the things that they are, and that we've got to leave that not stuff gone, because that's how our children feel. You get a kindergartner, a first grader, and they just want to do everything. By the time they get to junior high, they don't care about anything. Why? Because they've been told all this time about the things that they're not doing well in, rather than their strengths. So we did that with our teachers, and so I watched it, and I'm watching I'm in the class too, and I participate in their, it's called Genius Hour, when we have our Zoom meetings. I participate with them, because that shows them that I'm there with it. I'm not going to put them in a training that I'm not going to do myself, because I can learn something too, even though, anyway, I can learn something too. You're never too old to learn anything. So that's the deal there. There's an opportunity for them to earn graduate credit or continuing ed credit, which they need to continue their license. If they choose to do that, and I don't make it a requirement, but if they choose to do that, I let them know that the program will support you. And that those are induction dollars that I would have spent to travel them all over here to Bismarck and put them in a hotel room and make sure that their needs are cared for while they participated in a 3-day workshop. And so those same supports are available to my participants, so that if they choose to, they can have a continuing ed credit. They can earn up to 4 in an academic year, which is great plenty. They only need 2 in the next 3 years to maintain their license. So they're going to have to do it anyway. And so why not provide that as a perk, piece of candy at the end of the line. You know, if you do this, you can get your continuing ed credits and maintain your license. Isn't that a good deal? So those are some of the things that we're doing within our induction. You're going to have to stay tuned because, you know, I'll find out at the end, come April, how effective it was or how connected my participants felt like they were in that programming. But then come fall, I have 12 more undergrads that are going to be in their first semester of teaching, you know, full on in the classroom, and they'll be starting in again. So we'll, you know, we'll run a few iterations of this to be able to see, and maybe by fall, things will be different. I don't know, but I know that this is really well designed. It's easy. They can access it from any part in the state or country. And I don't need them to be doing anything that's more difficult than what they're already doing. You know, I'm not here to make it worse. So that's my induction plan here in North Dakota.
Thank you, Carmelita. So as we continue thinking about this, for this one, in the interest of time, because we do have a short amount left together, I'd like for us to kind of discuss in the chat box, you know, what are those pieces of your induction program that you think have been particularly successful? And particularly as you think about during this time from March until now, when schooling has looked very different, both for our program participants as well as for the students that they might be teaching, you know, how have you been able to adapt your program? What things have you done that you feel like have worked pretty well in this environment, as well as any particular challenges that you've encountered? And, you know, are there tools or resources that potentially we could be providing that would be helpful for you and for your program participants? Are there supports that we could be assisting with as well? So I'd love for you to join us over in the chat box. Remember, that's down at the bottom. There's a little chat bubble, and share some of that information over in the chat box. Those things that have been working particularly well during this time, and those challenges that are still existing, so we can, you know, kind of think about the tools or resources that we might be able to help with as well. As you're doing that, we do have one other discussion question that I want to make sure we think about. And Angela, did you want to explain this one? Oh, you're muted.
Yeah, so just back to your first recommendation to the team. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Back to the first recommendation you made to the group, just as an example and to prompt you guys thinking about what kind of resources or needs you have. Sarah mentioned earlier, you know, many of you are providing different examples and suggestions of, you know, social and emotional supports for teachers. Things like that. If there are things that you'd like us to compile, put together, that's certainly something that's easy and doable for us to do in the short term as you think about planning and particularly into this next semester. But moving to this question about the 18 cohort, it's just a reminder that I know many of you who are FY18 grantees, as you know, if you were 16 and 17, you had a 4-year grant. But for 18s with the 5-year grant, you have the 2 years of statutorily required induction services. I will say, having kind of vetted all of the proposals that were originally submitted and approved, it's important to note that many of those were written broadly enough for you to take and adjust as needed, especially given the circumstances before us today, and probably over, I would say, the next calendar year, to be conservative, to be thinking about the likelihood of needing to deliver induction services in this alternative environment. And so given that, what kinds of planning, what kinds of changes and shifting does that mean for you in terms of preparing? And so I'm going to just throw out some examples. I'm not going to attribute them to anyone, but many of you have already come to me, for example, with plans of, you know, I was originally going to pay these mentor teachers and now they're not in the classroom. we know that we would stand to benefit from having experts come and, be on a Zoom and do a workshop with our teachers as part of induction. So making those shifts and really thinking about what is it that they need now, and hearing you guys talk about those emotional and social supports. It might be some type of scaffolded effort where maybe you're looking to hire a subject matter expert or consultant that can support that social and emotional need of your participants, while also thinking about what are the tools that maybe they can learn from during an induction service workshop or a series of sessions that you provide, for how to provide for them to provide those same supports to their students. So, I mean, I think it's sort of kind of hitting two birds with one stone, if you will, and being able to get your participants the supports, emotional, social, and otherwise that they need, but also thinking about different ways to maybe shape the induction given the situation, again, that they're encountering now and having to be remote. I know I heard, for example, and Sarah, I'm borrowing from Nal, where we had offered, and I'm going to turn it over to Sarah to talk about the kind of distance learning sessions that we'll be offering and that we offered last year to our Native American language program grantees. Many of the staff took us up on participating in the distance learning professional development sessions we held, because they were native language instructors, meaning that they weren't being pulled in for professional development as part of, typical core subject professional development instruction. And so they were being left out of any supports around how to teach in a distance learning environment. So we were able to help meet that need. And so I think be thinking about those types of things where you think there are gaps in particular in the professional development that's already being offered to your participants. Where could we maybe help you think that through, or even, think about networking and getting you guys together to do something collectively? How can we help facilitate that process? So I'm asking you, I guess, to be creative in that approach and be thinking about how we might be able to help you leverage that work as well. Sarah, I'm going to turn it over to you to talk a bit about the opportunities that we have coming up.
Yeah, so I'm going to quickly run through a couple of resources and then share with you some events that we have coming up. So as we were thinking about induction services, and I'll be sending out the direct links, so don't worry that you're going to have to Google and search these, but there were some wonderful resources available in regards to thinking about induction services and also meeting the changing needs in this learning environment. So one of those was through the New Teacher Center. And this was just one of the many resources available through them, but really thinking about more of the traditional style of induction services and moving away from that toward a little bit more modern look, a little bit more relationship driven look to induction services, and giving some great tips and think abouts in regards to that. Another resource that we'll be sharing with you is from the Colorado Department of Education. And in particular, they have for induction services, but in particular for mentoring. And, a lot of the resources out there around mentoring often tend toward that student adult mentor relationship. And then we try to modify and make it work. And they have some really good information specifically for the mentorship between our new teachers and more experienced educators. So we'll share that one with you. And then also through the Literacy Information Communication System, they put together a mentoring guide specifically for teacher induction. So it provided some great information both for the mentors as well as for those teachers who are now being placed in the role of mentee, that they might not be used to that role, and how they could best take advantage of induction services and of that mentorship. So I think that was another one that would potentially be quite beneficial. And then many of you may be familiar with the What Works Clearinghouse. They're always coming out with new things, and I'm sure, like myself, you don't check it maybe as often as we should, but they have a brand new set of things in response to the pandemic and to a new focus on distance learning. So you could see here, they came out, this orange kind of salmon color is a webinar they came out with, really giving a good explanation. It's super short. It's about 15 minutes that you can watch, or your participants can watch, and just get an overview of everything that they have to offer. And then these infographics are really helpful for looking at, depending upon what content they're trying to work with and what age level they're trying to work with, the resources available. And so they've really rapid fire gone through research and looking for evidence-based practices in the distance learning realm, starting like beginning of April through now. And now they've been able to really put out that information to be able to utilize in the classroom. So some great information there.
Sarah, I would just add, kind of to underscore, Carmelita, what you were talking about earlier. Those resources from IES, from the Institute for Education Sciences, which is our research arm out of the department, those really go a long way to taking bite-size elements, bite-size pedagogical strategies for how somebody will teach fourth grade math in a distance learning environment. So it's very piecemeal, very easy and accessible. And it's all predicated, it's all developed and delivered based on evidence-based and research-based work. So it's good instruction, it's supported by evidence, it's a good practice. And where maybe the evidence isn't so great, it's clear about that as well. But I would encourage you to look at those because it's really easy to take and get. Even if you can't spend a lot of time with it yourself in giving it to your participants, they certainly could find some useful strategies there.
Yeah, the infographics are super easy to use and digest the information. All right. So then we have some other technical assistance events coming through us. So next Tuesday, we have a virtual event. It's going to be at 2 Eastern. And I want to stress that all of these distance learning events that we're going to be doing are not only available to you, but they are available to your participants. So there are definitely things within this that I think you could find beneficial for your work with your program participants, but then they could also find beneficial to use with their students and in their instruction. So the one coming up on Tuesday is a platform overview. So in particular, we are focusing on Zoom and Google Meet, because in polling with the different programs we work with, those tend to be by far the two largest of use. So we're focusing on those. These are informal sessions. So this really is providing a nice networking opportunity and nice discussion opportunity for folks to come together. We walk step by step. We literally go live into these tools and go step by step on how to use them from both the basic level up through the more advanced features. So it's anything from, I attend Zoom meetings, but I don't really know how to schedule one, up through using features like the polling or breakout rooms and how to set all of that up. We'll be doing more distance learning sessions after the first of the year. So in January, we'll be addressing communicating with students and families and some strategies and tools for that. We'll also be addressing survey and form options. And then those will continue throughout the year. So right now we're doing those about twice a month. And again, they're going to be open to any of your program participants that would find that beneficial. So don't feel like that's something that is only open, to you or your team. We want to be inclusive of everyone that could find that beneficial. And then the other event that we have coming up, these are our last two events before we have a little quiet time for the holiday break, is our December office hours session. So this is something that we're doing typically about once a month. It is open to any of the OIE discretionary grant programs, and it's an opportunity for you to come in and ask questions that you might have. It might be a budget question. It might be that you have a challenge going on in your program and you just want a thought partner. You want a brainstorm moment. Anything under the sun. So it is an informal session. It goes on for 1 hour and you can come in and out. So literally you could come in at 1:30 Eastern because you have a quick question and then pop back out. So it's that informal office hours type environment. So those are the last two that will be coming out. So I'll send a follow-up email with those direct links that you can click on and get a calendar invite for those. I'll send that right after our meeting today. And then, like I said, you're welcome to share out that distance learning event. I now want to turn it back over to Angela to talk about the notice of final regulations.
Yeah, I'm going to talk about that. I'm actually going to segue just a minute because I sent you all, you might have seen in the chat box, I uploaded a file that you can in turn download, and we'll send this out afterward as well. I sent this to you all in the summer, and I know just how eagerly you were waiting for my email over the summer, but just over the summer, I did send this new set of regulations, and it's really important given the questions that I saw in the chat box. I had folks asking about, what do we do if, it's COVID environment and people can't find placement? Over the summer, specifically at the end of June, we issued a set of COVID flexibility specific regulations for a certain set, if you will, a very finite set of participants. When you look in that document, in that Federal Register notice, you will see that it impacts anyone who graduated from your training program between October 1 of 2019 to this past September of 2020. And what it tells you is that anybody who graduated sometime between last October 1 and this last September 30, over that fiscal year for us, they have an additional 12 months in order to find placement and begin working toward their service payback obligation. So if you had anybody graduating in May or graduated last January or graduated in September, all of those individuals are eligible for that additional flexibility, meaning more time. So just to clarify for any of you who are, and I know some of you are newer to the program, just to the standard expectation is that the participant has 6 months from the date of graduation to go into the data collection system, begin to enter data about where they are. It's likely maybe they still haven't found placement. Hopefully they have, but if they haven't, at minimum, they're going in and they're reporting that they're either looking for work or they found placement. After 12 months from the date that you've exited them, which it should be that graduation date, after 12 months, that's when we start reaching out and asking them to comply, and we expect that they are responding and reporting, and they should be reporting service payback at that point, or alternatively, if they don't want to complete service payback and they want to go with a cash payback option, they can do that. And we work with them to set that up. But I just want to be clear that typically they really have, in essence, 12 months from the date of graduation. For this cohort only, that October 1 graduate to September 30, 2020 graduate, they have 24 months, meaning 2022 is when. But now if they do have a placement, I would encourage them to continue and get the credit for that, and be reporting that in the data collection system. You guys should know too, and this especially is relevant to our 16s and our 17s, the expectation is that we see, before you can close out your grant in compliance, that every single participant that you have has made effort to be able to enter the data system and provide updated contact information or reporting as needed or as applicable. If they have not, typically I've reached out to you and said, hey, you've got a person who hasn't. As long as you guys, the project directors, are on record for providing that feedback and letting me know, hey, we tried to reach them and they're not responding to us either, that's your evidence of making every effort to support them to get that done. And after that, we'll be working with them directly. But again, I just want to make sure that you guys are aware of that flexibility. Read through it if and when you have questions and you want to be clear about who's applicable for this and who might be qualified for this among your participants, feel free to give me a call, set up time to have a conversation, and we can talk about this. And if there are enough of you with questions about it, I'm happy to talk about it in a small group over in more detail in the coming weeks. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. So I do want to share just our contact information here, both for Angela as well as for the data collection system, and then also for us at the TA team. So you are welcome to contact us at oie@seiservices.com. I'll also pop that over in the chat box. So as I mentioned before, as you're thinking through some of those discussion questions and begin coming up with new ideas about tools, resources that would be beneficial, ideas of things that we could do in the future that would be helpful, please shoot those over to us, and we will definitely start putting that all together and getting new things out and about. Also, a reminder that we are heading into the holiday season. So from December 18th through about January 4th, that 2-week time, hopefully you're going to get some rest and be able to step away from your desk a bit. And we will be as well, both at OIE and with the TA team. We'll definitely still be in and checking email occasionally and things like that, but there will be more limited communication, and then no webinars for you to join. So hopefully you'll get a 2-week webinar free, not on camera break, both here as well as in your regular work. So make sure to get that contact information. We will be sending out this PowerPoint deck as well as a recording, a link to the recording of this event. So you'll get all of that information as well.
Sarah, can I ask you to make sure that we also include the chat just as a separate file for folks? Because
Yes.
a lot of the stuff was in there as well.
Yes, we'll take all of that shared information and put that together. So we are right at time. We are happy to stay on for a few minutes and take any final questions. But if you look over in the chat box, you'll notice that Sarah Whitehead has conveniently placed our feedback survey over there for you. It is super short. If you've taken these feedback surveys before, maybe they were long, but this one, I promise, takes about 3 minutes to complete. So I would greatly appreciate if you would take just a few moments to complete that, and you can click that link and take care of that. Like I said, we'll stay on for questions, but I would ask you to do one final participant poll with those green and red yes, no buttons. So was this webinar beneficial for you and or your program? Was this helpful? If you don't mind heading over, again, it's the participant button at the bottom with the 2 little people, which will open up the list of folks and give you a yes, no button. And we would just appreciate that quick feedback, but definitely still check out the feedback survey. I'm not seeing any questions over in the chat box, but feel free to unmute if you have questions as well.
Are there any updates on the RFP release for 2021?
Thanks, Maria.
You knew I'd ask that.
No, I'm glad you did, because I skipped right past it, focusing on the COVID flexibility. But basically, no. There's a notice of final regs, and I did give you guys that link to it again, and I'll probably send out the notice of the final regs again, Sarah. But the reason I'm doing that, guys, is just as a reminder, and to those of you maybe newer to federal grants, when you see that notice of final regulations, it really gives you a lot of clarity around what you can probably expect for a next competition. So if you have not yet taken a look at those, I would strongly encourage you to do so. It puts you at a level of readiness that's ahead of the game. And we do still, at least as of now, expect that we will have an FY21 competition.
Great.
Thank you, Angela.
Thanks, Maria.
All right, well, it looks like that may be all of our questions. So thank you for joining. Have a wonderful weekend, and we hope to see you next week on the distance learning or the office hours, or after the first of the year on our next webinar.
Thank you, everybody. Have a great weekend.